Welcome to Sleepy Tales. My name is Mateus, and before we begin today's story, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below saying, "I'll sleep well tonight." Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive into tonight's tale. The city had always been bustling with life, but now it was eerily quiet. The streets were deserted, and the buildings were abandoned. Something had gone terribly wrong. A deadly virus had spread throughout the city, turning people into ravenous zombies. A small group of survivors led by a tough ex-military man named Jack had managed to stay alive in the chaos. They scavenged for food and supplies and fortified a safe house in the heart of the city. But they knew they couldn't stay there forever. They needed to find a way out before it was too late. One day, they came across a scientist who claimed to have found a cure for the virus. His name was Dr. Peters, and he had been working on the cure before the outbreak. He had a lab where he believed the cure could be produced in large quantities. The group saw this as their chance to finally escape the city. Dr. Peters agreed to help the group, but he warned them that it wouldn't be easy. The lab was on the other side of the city, which meant they would have to fight their way through hordes of zombies to get there. Jack and his team were up for the challenge. They prepared their weapons and set out early the next morning. As they made their way through the city, they encountered several groups of zombies. Jack and his team fought valiantly, but it was a grueling battle. They were outnumbered and outmatched, but they persevered. After hours of fighting, they finally arrived at the lab. Dr. Peters greeted them and led them to his lab. He showed them the vials of the cure and explained how it worked. The group was overjoyed. They finally had a chance to escape the city and start anew. But then, Dr. Peters revealed his true intentions. He had created the virus as a means of population control. He believed that the world was overpopulated and that the virus would help thin out the human population. He had been working on a way to control the zombies, to turn them into an army that he could use to achieve his goal. The group was horrified. They had risked their lives to help Dr. Peters, only to find out that he was the cause of their suffering. Jack and his team knew that they couldn't let Dr. Peters succeed. They fought him and his zombie army with everything they had. It was a brutal battle, but Jack and his team emerged victorious. They destroyed the lab and the vials of the cure, ensuring that Dr. Peters' plan would never come to fruition. They left the city behind, knowing that they had saved themselves and possibly the world. As they drove away, Jack thought about the horrors they had faced and the sacrifices they had made. He knew that they would never forget the lessons they had learned in the city of the dead. But as they were driving away, Jack noticed something strange happening in the rearview mirror. The buildings they had just left behind were beginning to collapse and crumble. It was as if they were being destroyed from within. Jack realized with horror that the virus was still alive, and it was still spreading. He knew they had to act fast. They drove back to the lab, hoping to find something that could help them stop the virus. As they searched through the rubble, they found a notebook belonging to Dr. Peters. In it, they found notes detailing a second lab where he had been conducting his research. The group set out to find the second lab, but they soon realized that it was even more heavily guarded than the first. They fought their way through, but the damage had already been done. The virus had spread to other cities, and there was no stopping it. Jack and his team were devastated. They had risked everything to find a cure, but it had all been for nothing. As they drove away from the lab, they could see the world crumbling around them. They had thought they had won, but in reality, they had only delayed the inevitable. In the end, the virus had wiped out most of the human population, leaving only a handful of survivors scattered throughout the world. Jack and his team were among them, but they knew that their victory had been hollow. They had saved themselves, but they had failed to save the world. The plot twist was that Dr. Peters had actually created the virus to thin out the human population, and even though Jack and his team had destroyed the lab and the vials of the cure, it was already too late. The virus had spread to other cities, and there was no stopping it. This added an extra layer of horror and despair to the story, as the survivors realized that they had only delayed the inevitable. Thank you for listening to this bedtime story, and remember, if you struggle with falling or staying asleep at night, click on the first link in the description for the ultimate solution to your problem. Now, choose one of these two videos and continue on our journey in the world of bedtime stories.